Well, thank you, Lisa, for doing that. Thanks for all of you coming out on a Thursday afternoon in a gorgeous, beautiful Arizona day. It's been an interesting 3 months in this new administration. And so what I thought I'd do is kind of run down some things that are happening, and particularly as business owners, you need to forecast what's coming down the pipe. And there's some scary troubled waters coming our way. So we want to be a key for them. But you find this whenever you have one-party rule. When you have the White House, when you have the Senate, and you have the House. That's a scary thing because there's really no checks and balances. And with this administration, they're kowtowing to the far left. And I don't want to get real political, but that's very, very different than what we would see in mainstream Democratic circles. So let's go. Taxes. That's the first thing we got to be talking about is taxes. You see this spending spree just going out of style. In fact, the last COVID package, less than 9% of that money would have actually gone to COVID. And it's not all in this year. There was over $1 trillion still sitting outside from previous COVID packages that had not been used. $1 trillion still sitting out there. And we still pass this boondoggle. Crazy. But in that, you're actually being taxed $5,000 per person to get $1,400 back. Now think about that. $5,000 of tax, you get $1,400. In fact, we actually went and took 9 line items out of this, so not the whole package. Took that money, divided by the number of people in the United States, and everybody would have gotten $10,000 with that cash. $10,000. That puts it in real perspective. That's how much 9 line items of that bill were. That's pretty incredible. Now, where are the taxes coming from? So you're going to see an increase in the corporate rates. You've seen the president actually pushing for 28%. They're actually pushing worldwide for a minimum tax corporate rate. That's not going to go over real well. And you got China breathing down our neck. They see it as an opportunity, a big opportunity to make advances. So from that standpoint, there's the first tax. The second tax you're going to see, and soon probably coming out in the next 2 to 3 weeks, is a tax on the Second Amendment. They want to tax your ammo, they want to tax your guns. They want to limit your ammo and limit your guns. And you just saw the executive order today in regards to the president talking about fixations of handguns. So here it comes. They're going to be pushing and pushing hard. Now, a lot of these things would require a filibuster-proof majority. And that's why they're trying to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. And I would be ashamed if I didn't bring it up, but it seems like it's the only person standing in the way is an Arizona Democrat, Kirsten Sinema. Joe Manchin has already shown that he's mitigating this, he's changing his tune. But Kirsten Sinema has been steadfast in regards to keeping the filibuster. Remember, the House was meant to be kind of a hot, impulsive body. And the Senate was the more deliberative body, where you actually got to cool it off and get both sides of the issue. In the House side, not one of these bills we've taken up so far has gone through committee. Not one. These are all from the Speaker's office. I warned everybody about this. Paul Ryan did the same thing as part of his tenure as Speaker. So we've taught the Speaker a new trick, and she's darn good at it. We may hate it, but she's really good at that process. So we really need to keep that filibuster. Otherwise, H.R. 1, which will change our elections, will go through, and we'll be a one-party system for quite some time. The next thing you're going to hear about is infrastructure. Now, I don't know if anybody's really listened and noted what they're talking about infrastructure, but they're redefining the information as what infrastructure would be. not just roads and bridges. In fact, less than 9% of the bill that they're proposing, $2 trillion, is in roads and bridges. A lot of this other stuff, as it's being unveiled, it will come to light that it's really a boondoggle, a wish list for a Green New Deal and aspects like that. That brings me to the next point of next taxes. And you're going to see taxing increases on energy. You're starting to see it already. From the beginning of the year, gasoline has risen almost 50 cents, if not more. And we're going to see big time changes with that as well. When you put a kibosh on things that Congress enacted, whether it be the Keystone Pipeline, Dakota Pipeline, or up in Anwar, these are all dictated by acts of Congress, and the executive branch is to fulfill those, not to mitigate them, and that's why they're in court. We'll find that the border wall, Anwar, and the pipelines will probably end up going forward despite of the administration's process to stop them. What we've started seeing is some traction in regards to our economy. Last year, under the tutelage of President Trump, we gained about 56% of all those job losses that we had done during the COVID process. So those are good things that we're looking at, and we're starting to see a spending increase of almost 7%. But once again, if we keep our policies going like we are now, we're going to see a definite rescission, rescinding and tightening of that GDP. Now I want to come to the border crisis. This is an out-of-the-way problem. If the administration had done nothing, just keep the policies in place, we'd be so much better off. In fact, Mexico wouldn't be yelling in our ear. Mexico actually liked what the Trump administration had done. Keeping the asylum seekers in Mexico as they were adjudicated is a smart deal, really smart. And look where it's got us. Just yesterday, they released the information. 171,000 captures in March alone. And Border Patrol is telling us that it's maybe one of three, maybe one of four that they're capturing. So if that's true, almost 800,000 people came through possibly. And look at who's coming through. They just caught 2 Yemenis that are on the terrorist watch list. So you can't tell me this has nothing to do with our defense, our national security. And in March alone, 19,000 children. 19,000 children in the month of March. All-time records. The holding facilities in Texas, 16 times the capacity. So a lot of these individuals, they're not even processing. They're turning them and letting them go. The catch and release process. So no accountability whatsoever. There's no COVID testing. If it is, it's very limited. And this population is much higher than our population with COVID. So unbelievable. I just got back from Yuma. We spent the whole day on the border. We actually watched people come illegally across the border. They were from Cuba. They were from Romania. They were from China. They were from Pakistan. They were from Somalia. They were from the Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. They were also from Cuba. Amazing what was going to happen. And the most striking thing was at the end of the day, a female coyote took 7 kids across the border. 2 young boys, 7 and 10, and 5 girls, 11 to 17. We're facilitating human trafficking. Border Patrol is telling us that most of these girls have on them day after pills. They're being exploited, they're being raped, and a lot of this is not their doing. In fact, the cartels made over $400 million in February alone off of just transferring people across the border, smuggling. It's more lucrative than drugs without the complications. That's pretty sick. That's really sick. In fact, now we are hearing some of the information. The Biden administration in Arizona and Texas purchased 1,200 hotel rooms so they could put these folks up at a cost of $87 million. That comes out to $70,000 per illegal immigrant. I don't know about you, but I think that we have to also look at the courts. So you're going to see some of this stuff moving forward. You see lawsuits being filed by Texas and Arizona by their AGs. Hopefully our governor will also start jumping in and being involved. And that's the dictation of what the states have been done to them by the federal government. Impugned liability. Governor Ducey has made a statement that he would like the federal government to compensate the state of Arizona for the National Guard. That will be a welcome help for our Border Patrol folks. Very, very important. From the most part that I can tell you, things are going to be a little bit slower. At least we hope a little bit slower coming up. We go back Tuesday, we've been off 3 weeks for the Easter break, so I've been running around through all the district. And our district is in pretty good shape. Even your town had set records for tax revenue. But there's a lot of people that want to come to Arizona. We see building in Pinal County, in Maricopa, see it in Mojave, in Yavapai. And help wanted. You know, there's jobs to galore. And so from that standpoint, we just got to get back to opening up our economy. That will help us. And try to stay away from some of the taxes. Hopefully we can mitigate some of those aspects. So from that standpoint, I thought what I'd do is that would be the end of my comments. And I'd take your questions, if that would help. Thank you. Questions?
Oh, were we shy all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
All right.
I kiss and tell, so it's Lisa.
You knew that I was going to have questions because I'm not shy. So today is a day that across the country, chambers of commerce are speaking out about the PRO Act and opposing the PRO Act. Can you give us your thoughts on the PRO Act?
This is the infrastructure.
It's the required to sign on to the union or to pay the union.
Yeah. I am an open market guy. I am not a big aspect for the unions. That should be an individual choice. You should not have to be forced if you get a job to join the union and have your dollars spent on candidates or political actions that you don't agree with. Once again, we're in the minority on this, and there may be even some Republicans that will actually vote for the PRO Act. And the reason being, maybe coming from Pennsylvania or Ohio, that's a pretty big influence. But once again, it's a policy, so it would be subject to the filibuster rule in the Senate. That's why it is so important to fight for that filibuster. And I would have everybody text, email, and write letters to Christian Senator saying thank you for standing your ground, give her some support on the filibuster. Yes, sir.
Congressman Gosar, first I want to thank you for helping reform some of the paycheck protection programs. Now I talked to
Do what?
some of the paycheck protection
Yeah,
program
maybe.
reform. I talked to you, I think in here or somewhere nearby a year ago. I was up the street, and all of those that we'd asked for came about, perhaps a little late. And you're right. Locally, our economies are doing extremely well. Havasu's taxation year to date over last year's up 22%, last year was up 11%. It's even up in restaurants and lodging down the roof right now. So we are doing well. The problem we have right now is workforce housing. It's a big problem. Rentals are unavailable. One hits the market within 24 hours, there's 20 applicants. Cost to build, stuff being resold right now, 30-year-old homes are listed at over $300 a foot. It's it's a huge problem, and bringing people into the community is almost undoable this time.
Yeah. But these are some of the growing pains that we're going to have to look at and have to organize. But the one thing I can tell you is we don't want federal government central planning. This was key in regards to, if you remember this program called Furthering Affirmative Fair Housing Initiative under the Obama administration, where they were actually dictating planning and zoning from Washington, D.C., so that they get choreographed where Section 8 housing would go, where low-income individual houses could go, micromanaging that. And so we got to keep that back at the local level. PPP, I know was a help. I didn't vote for this last piece of the COVID, and part of the reason was I was more willing to do a more targeted type of approach, particularly for small business. So I was much more in the camp of what the Senate was trying to propose, and would have loved to see it under $700 billion. But the workforce is problematic. We warned the federal government that if you give people that unemployment benefit like we did, they're not going back to work. That's problematic. And I think that's the one thing that really knocked a lot of congressmen back, is that they found out, hey, listen, this wasn't such a wise idea. And it seems like this administration is going to continue that aspect with that unemployment benefit. So I don't know how we're going to address that and how they're going to do it, other than keep passing these bills and stimulus aspects. When we read the bills, they're just filled with crap. It's all over the place. It's a wish list of all of the progressive mantra that they want. So I wish I had a better song and dance for you, but I'm from the federal government. I'm not here to help. Yeah. Did that kind of answer your question? Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah, somewhat in line with what Dr. Tapscott was offering. Do you anticipate another stimulus bill coming through? Is there going to be yet another stimulus?
I suspect they will.
And what do you, depending on the size, of course, but the accumulated effect of this spending means what for the American people besides higher taxes, of course, you already mentioned that, but what about the value of our currencies and effect on inflation?
Well, we're going to see inflation. Most people believe inflation is coming. We're already starting to see some inflation in regards to energy prices and other things that contribute to that process. You're $30 trillion in debt. We put $7 trillion of it in just the last year and a half. You're going to do another stimulus process with this transportation bill. It's not a transportation and infrastructure bill. It's actually a stimulus bill, with less than 7% of it going to infrastructure, true infrastructure. It's a boon bill. China, we should be watching China like a hawk. They think we are in a weak position, and so they're making moves. They've been very aggressive in the South China Sea. They have been very manipulative in regards to One Belt, One Road, extorting minerals around the world, particularly in second nations that are trying to get up to it with everybody else. And we play right into their hands. But there's a point where you got to stop, and you got to let the economy go. If they do these tax increases to 28%, it's going to be no different than what happened under Obama. All the high-paying jobs are going overseas. Service industry will stay here, but that's about it. That's why one of the things that we have to look at in immigration is some of these programs. Now, there's a program I've kind of been held to break up. It's called the OPT program, the Optional Practical Training Program. This incentivizes big companies like big tech to bring in Pakistanis and Indians and Chinese to fill these positions at a much lower rate. And then they get a 15.5% discount on that salary. Anybody know what that is? Because you're withholding tax. So they're not putting in their due share, but they'll be eligible for that share later on. That's why you see in the Medicare now, insolvency has been moved up to 2024. Anybody on Medicare want Medicare for all? That's why they're doing it. Because when you look at that $30 trillion debt, you got to know who do you owe it to. First of all, people will say China. No. You owe more in student debt than you do to China. About $1.5 trillion. And I can make an argument on loans that they've never paid back that exceeds that or is equal to that. But over 50% of that is owed to you in benefits of Social Security, Medicare, and pensions. So how do you get away from honoring that process? By lowering the service. So if you're under Medicare, okay, let's say Paul's 80 years old. He's had 2 heart attacks. He's had a bout with cancer. Nope. Restriction. We're not, you do what you want, but we're not going to fund it for you. That's where the services are going to come about. That's, I tell you what, for most of our seniors, I think that is problematic beyond reason. Does that help?
No.
They're talking strange things. This is craziness. I'm with a group that's trying to delay everything. So we're the guys and gals that go to the floor and say, "You want to pass a bill by unanimous consent?" No, you're not. We're going to vote on it. We're going to make you vote on it. We make motions to adjourn. We would hope that our majority leader would actually go to the floor and actually ask for a motion to vacate the chair. That's where you change out speakers. They changed the rules on that. So there's only one person who can do that. You got 20 Democrats. I'm trying not to be partisan here, but you have 20 Democrats that are on the line to lose their job in the House. Why not do that now? Why not get after it right now and start breaking this up? As I was telling one of the individuals before, Alcee Hastings just passed away in Florida. So now it's 217 to 212, soon to be 213. That means a defection of 2 changes this. Now what if you were to get Ms. Spanberg, who barely won, who actually had the gumption to challenge Nancy Pelosi? We're going down this road where a lot of us are not going to return. Put some interest for them in trying to keep their job. We ought to be doing more of that right now. Because at $30 trillion in debt and attacking all of our constitutional rights, that's not what Congress is for.
May I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to that? So it was kind of surprising to see how many CEOs suddenly jumped right into this Georgia voting thing, and it was surprising because you probably unfairly, but typically associate business support as being maybe more on the Republican side of things. And that, to me, raised the questions. I would think Republicans would say, what's going on here in terms of business support for sudden wokeness, or whatever you describe that as. And so what do the Republicans need to do to change that lopsided, to change the lopsidedness in both houses? Right?
Well, first of all, educate people. And I think now we're starting to see that. New Jersey has worse voting rules than does Georgia. Georgia's pretty dang lenient. 17 days for balloting, even drop boxes. But the 2 things that the Democrats don't want are signature verification and voter ID. If I send somebody up to, if any of you want to go to the White House, you've got to have a proper ID. And Georgia, if you don't have one, we'll get one for you. But this is the manipulation of this country by big business. You see it exacerbated with the platforms. Google, Facebook. They've now turned this country upside down, and the world for that matter. Congressman, they gave them their site to grow and build. Never thought they were going to go into the public realm of the public square on freedom of speech. Never. And the immunity clause, Section 230, is exorbitant. It's been applied across the board. So there's got to be some realization of how do we tame that beast. Now, Democrats want to go in and break them up with antitrust laws, monopoly. Well, that's good, but you take 5 sharks and turn them into a school of piranha. You're going to get eaten up no matter what. It's just the size of the bite. You've got to get to that immunity case level. That's why what we've done is something like a business would do. So what we do is we allow that immunity to stay in place. But you as the subscribers have to have a contract with those platforms. You have to decide, do I want to filter on my internet or not? And if you don't or you do, they have to honor it. And if you find them in violation, they lose that immunity and they can be sued. Now everybody looks at me and says, Dr. Gosar, I'm just one person. Google's huge. Well, so are the trial attorneys. They're very creative. Anytime we take 2 big groups and put them against each other, we win. So the other thing is your data. Did you give them the right to your data? They bundle it and sell it. That's not right. They should have your permission. They're a private business, by the way. They're not entitled to that unless you give consent. So these are some of the things that we've got to really address. Republicans, yes, I got to tell you, we're more now the working class. Who knew that Wall Street would back Joe Biden? But I said this over and over again. The problem in Washington, D.C. was we got 2 aristocracies, 2 groups. Those Republican and those are Democrats. They wanted to go back to the way it was. Plain and simple. People like Donald Trump, people like Paul Gosar are scared the living bejesus out of him. He asks too many questions. That's surely a problem that we're going to have to see. But we have to educate people. I think that's the biggest key. I think the other thing is stay tuned. What we've always wanted was a fair and transparent election. Now, I don't care who wins, but don't rub my face in it, like in Arizona. So, some problems exist. So, what ends up happening the Maricopa County election board decides to do a small audit. They run 100 random duplicate ballots. These are the ballots that are torn or munched up or have coffee stains or something on them. And they have to manually pull them out, look at them, and put the marks that you put down, and then run them through the machine. So 100. They had a 3% error rate on 2 ballots. Both voted for Donald Trump, by the way. First one took Donald Trump's vote and gave it to Joe Biden. Second one was deleted. Now you wonder about why we were asking about Dominion voting machines. Okay, let's go back to 2019. Senate Subcommittee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Election Integrity, looked at Dominion and some of these machines, basically said they were 100% corrupt. 100% corrupt. Software is built on switch and delete. Don't take my word for it. Go to HBO. Here's your assignment. Go to HBO and get this movie called Kill Chain. Democrats actually put it down, folks. They're looking at 2016 from the Russiagate aspect. That machine is known for switch and delete. Let's go back to Maricopa County again. So now they say 3% error rate, that's 90,000 ballots being questioned in Maricopa County. How much did Trump lose by? Around 10,000. So what do? They take 2,500 of them, these random ballots. They start processing. They stop. They don't even get they just get partway through. We were told it was a 17% error rate. That's between 300,000 and 500,000 votes. The folks that I was working with, that came to me, who have expertise on security exchange and from the military, basically said there was between 400,000 and 700,000 ballots that were altered in Arizona. I thought I voted for the right person and they got the vote. Now I can't do that. I can't guarantee that. Then you have Maricopa County Board of Supervisors suing the state legislature, the state senate, for lack of jurisdiction. Are you kidding me? Now last Friday, after a consent decree with the judge, they were about ready to start the audit and were asking to keep the ballots and machines right there in Maricopa County. They refused. Now it looks like there's a deal for all the machines and the ballots to go to Glendale, the Cardinal Stadium, where it'll be under lock and key and they'll get it done there. That's not just in Arizona. Georgia, Fulton County. The judge is about ready to, and most people believe that he's going to overturn the rule and open up the books so they do the same thing, this forensic audit. Count the paper ballots, look at the machines, da-da-da-da-da. This is problematic. If you can't have a fair election, you can't have a republic. Yes. Thanks, Hamper.
What is supposed to be the check on executive power at the federal level, and are you concerned that there's too much governance by the executive branch, and what, if anything, can be done to rein it in?
Okay, so that's a great question. So there are some orders that have just been done that violate what they call the Anti-Deficiency Act and the National Compounding Act. What that basically means is a penny can't be spent by the federal government unless Congress dictates it in a specific form. So let's go back to the border wall. Joe Biden stopped. Well, that was actually an act of Congress. That was a budget deal. That's why all of a sudden now they're starting to talk about maybe resuming building that wall, because they're going to lose in court. Okay? Same thing with the pipelines. Same thing with ANWR. These are all acts of Congress. But they're also playing the game back. So most of you, do you know anything about Resolution Copper? Big copper mine over there in Superior, Arizona. They mined that area for about 100 years. They didn't realize that the majority of the saturated copper discovery was at 7,000 feet below. There was a transfer that we got done in my second term, well, actually my first term. It would bring $60 billion to the state of Arizona. $60 billion. We take up 1/4 of all the copper needs in the United States. So everything was going fine. They challenged the ruling. Judge ruled, no, Congress has dictated this, it's almost done. We have one final check off on the Forest Service. And guess what? Oklahoma decides, nope, we're going to throw them up your engines. Now they know that they can't get it restricted except by an order of Congress. So what we have to do is we now have to watch him on any must-pass bill that he puts an amendment like that and ties it to them. Because then Congress, if they vote that way and they sign into law, reverts it back, like a takings during the COVID exercise. That's what's going on here. So we have to look at the Impoundment Act and the Anti-Deficiency Act. I have been screaming about both of those for now 10 years. The next thing is you bring up this 10th Amendment. We need states. We need governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, state senators and state house members to be staunch and forthright about the sovereignty of their state and start to sue and start passing litigation, passing litigation and legislation. Look what's going on in Florida. My friend Ron DeSantis has turned that upside down. And we know why CBS does a hit piece on it. Because he's making waves. People are starting to follow suit. Our strength's going to be the 10th Amendment. We just got to get to that point where we can have 2022 and fight for something, not fall for anything. Does that help?
Well, with all due respect, if the books are being cooked as far as voting count is concerned, what makes you optimistic that 2022 is going to turn out any different if there's phantom votes being counted or dismissed?
That's why we want this forensic audit, so that you have the facts. Maybe Joe Biden will win. I don't know. I doubt it. I don't think that's a good case. We spend a lot of time in Arizona. And when you have a Democratic candidate that comes to Phoenix and has 0 people waiting for him, and you see a president that announces less than 48 hours that he's coming to Prescott or Bullhead City or Yuma, and there's 30,000+ people that come from all over the place, that should tell you. You know, but I mean, we have to get the facts. Without the facts, we can't change the future, and that's why we're so pointed about it. Now we're being attacked for it. Okay, so, you know, I'm the gentleman that stood up first on Arizona to stop the seating of our electors. And now I'm proud to tell you I got an ethics complaint by none other than this Chaz representative, the representative from Seattle, Washington. She said I instigated the 6th insurrection. Folks, 0 weapons were found. 0. That's hardly an insurrection. Now, maybe a crowd that got out of control, a little bit of rioting. Yeah, that's possible. But the person who died at the hands of a Capitol police officer. She was shot in the neck. They'll tell you that there are 6 other people that died. Yeah, one had an aneurysm, several heart attacks, heat stroke. But everywhere I went to speak, I said, you have a right under the First Amendment to assemble, peacefully assemble, to address the grievances of your government. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly. No violence. Everywhere I went, that's what I said. So, Ms. Jayapal, if she would like to do this, that's fine. But I'm not sitting back. We've looked at the speech and debate clause, and we now know that the speech and debate clause does not cover what she's been doing. So you're going to probably see some lightning fire lawsuits coming out of Congress, out of my window, because I'm going to bite back. This is wrong. And when you start looking at the indiscriminate slander that's going on, you have 2 Supreme Court justices, both Roberts and Gorsuch, that actually brought this up last October and basically said, we have to revisit the slander rules. You just can't say something about anybody and let it see if it sticks. You have to suffer consequences. This is following the Palin versus New York Times lawsuit that the Supreme Court gave merit to. We're seeing. So once we get the facts, then we can lay it out. Yes?
You know, when I watch the president addressing the nation, I wonder about his, like many other people, his mental capacity, and there's been a lot of talk about that. I mean, as far as perception, is that an issue that gets a lot of discussion up on the Hill? I mean, or is it just real quiet because he's the president?
No, I will tell you, most of us believe in a lot of chatter. If you remember, during the election, they were talking about the 25th Amendment. Pelosi was very forward about it. It wasn't for Donald Trump. You'll see Joe Biden as long as he can read a teleprompter. After that, he's already told you, he'll get sick and go away. Those are his own words, by the way. So, if you look at the policy schematic, it's got to be Barack Obama. Jen Psaki's always said, and has already told us, that they meet almost on a daily basis. They talk on a daily basis, sometimes 1, 2, 3 times a day. I should tell you an awful lot about this. And the fact that they came out of the chute with all these bills, none of them going through the committee, no debates, no amendments, no motion to recommit, which is the voice of the minority. Oh, they've been planning this. They've been planning this in their insurrection, full heart, and it's full throttle. But he's not the same as Joe Biden. I think anybody can see that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Chris. I kind of have like I'm just feeling like this is my observation. I feel like right now with the Biden administration, we are under the rule of one.
Yep.
Because he has been issuing all these executive orders, and I keep thinking to myself, how can he just single-handedly make all these decisions? Because nothing really gets done unless it's enacted by Congress.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that all of you are going, whoa, whoa, now we have double the work to do to try. I don't know, is there some way that he can just, hey, listen, buddy, you can't be doing this. It's not up to you to make these decisions for the entire United States.
Well, we got to take a playbook out of what the Democrats did. They did for 4 years to Donald Trump. They made innuendos that turned out to be all false.
Right.
So once again, bad process, bad policy, bad politics.
Okay.
And so what we have to do is we have to learn to fight for our republic. And that's kind of odd for some of our Republican leaders. They want to go along and get along. Some look at power. I'll be the next Speaker of the House. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Maybe you won't get that chance. If we don't show the American people that we're fighting for their liberties and freedoms, for their constitutional rights, why would somebody go to the poll? Tell me what's the difference between a Republican and Democrat?
We just had a spring primary in Wisconsin, and voter turnout was very, very low.
Yeah.
We had appeals court judges, and I was like, are you kidding me? I'm a firm believer of trickle up politics.
Yeah.
Gather yourself around at your local level, and then you move it up, to where it really counts.
Well, once again, that's why I'm spending so much time and push for this voter integrity.
Yeah.
Because if the basic essential aspect of a vote, that freedom and transparency, my vote going to the person I want to cast. If you can't have that, why am I going to the polls?
Right. And I think a lot of people right now may feel that way because of the presidential election and then what's going to happen at the midterms. And I feel like now is really when we need to be out there.
Yep.
And, and prove there is integrity or that it can happen.
Well, see, and so that was my point. On January 6th, my comment, no one listened to what I said.
I'll listen.
I said, I'm not talking about you, but nobody. No one has listened to what I actually said. I said that there was enough time between the 6th and the 21st for 10 days to do a forensic audit for transparency and authenticity of that ballot so that the American people, whether they be in 6 states or any other state that would wish to do it, feels as certain that they get their vote counted properly. That would put it to the 16th. Both Trump and Biden are going to do virtual inaugurations. So that's a big deal. Okay, so that's where it starts. That was the magic of the United States, is that you are the government. You are voting on that government. And you got to have that stalwart aspect that when I vote, my vote is counted properly. not switched, deleted, whatever.
Right.
And by the way, you bring up a good question. So, in 2019, we knew something was coming. We had heard some rumblings. And believe it or not, the Cinema McSally race in 2018 showed us some interesting things. So in the early balloting, it was 50-50. McSally up 20-some thousand. I don't know if the numbers right, but it's close to it. Day of 50-50, she increases her. Then they bring in the temporary polling places. They go 90-10. How does that work? That's what this election did. There were 3 counties particularly: Maricopa, Coconino, and Pima. So you get these dumps and batches of votes that come in. So if it's from Tucson, they should be all pretty similar, kind of liberal, okay? So Biden should be, if he got 61% on the first dump, the rest of the dump should be 59, 60, 62, should be the general range, but not 35. When you start seeing that, and particularly at the beginning of the dumps, they were doing something very different.
Right.
So to give you an example, the 2 guys that had come to me, they were scraping the information off of an amalgamator called Edison. All an amalgamator is they gather all the information from the Secretary of State and putting them out to the media. They were scraping from the New York Times. At the same time, they were scraping the Secretary of State of Arizona. So they know the numbers are the same. They know they're right. They got alerted because they started seeing votes going into Donald Trump's box, and seconds later come back out. Almost for a T. It was 64,000, then 64,000 came out and went into these other departments. That can't be explained. And then when you look at the batches from those 3 entities, Maricopa, Pima, and Coconino, the first dump is huge to Biden. And then it's an aberration. It's a big aberration. It's in some cases 60% aberration. And that's how it gets fraud. So there's problems here. And I look at it as, is if there was no problem, why do the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors care?
Yeah.
That is
steadfast.
We actually gave them a softball. We pitched them up a big old cantaloupe, saying, whack this out of the universe. But they chose not to. They chose to bark and bite. Now, I will also address something else. We have such problems in Arizona. We have a few. We have the McCain family who hates Donald Trump, and maybe Donald Trump hates them. But it got the best of them. So the McCainites did not back Trump. And the comments from Mrs. McCain, I think, are atrocious. Blaming Kelly Ward for losing the election. No, Kelly Ward wasn't the one voting for Joe Biden. You reap what you sow. Sorry for the long explanation. You got me wound up.
Hopefully things will be a little different with redrawing the district maps. That will help people play a little bit more.
Well, okay,
But
redistricting.
maybe get a vote in a new city council for Maricopa County.
Well,
And
it'd be
Board of
nice.
Supervisors.
We're going to grow by 1, for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe even 2. And so, hopefully they'll follow the law. In the last redistricting, we did not follow the law.
Yeah.
First aspect has to be communities of jurisdiction of commonality.
Right.
You know, tell me what Pinal County has with Maricopa, or with Yavapai and Mojave.
Yeah.
They don't. There's really no connection. The connection is more Mojave, Yavapai, Coconino, maybe La Paz, maybe a little bit of Black Canyon City and North Ann. Those are communities of interest. If they do their job there, that will do just fine. But once again, this is a multi-headed beast.
Yeah.
Election integrity, using the 10th Amendment to sue on these dictations that are frankly unconstitutional, use the courts, and making sure that we put people in places that aren't gonna bend. They're gonna fight, bite, and scratch. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. And I tell you, I kiss and tell. Inquiring minds may want to know. Yes?
Where's the Supreme Court in all this? Why are they sitting on their hands?
We don't know. Okay, and the court system is kind of interesting. You know, the 3 judges were silent that Donald Trump put on there, or so we think. I'm not an attorney, but there's a couple of good friends of mine that are attorneys that have got a little different tact. So they were looking at it, they saw that there was a lot of problems across the board. Instead of dwelling with just each individual component, their thought is that they were looking for the big picture, a big bite of the apple. Now let's kind of walk through some things. So what if you find that in those 6 states, or enough of the states, not to give Mr. Biden his way, you find fraud that much? But this is speculative. The Constitution is silent on what happens. But it's not silent in Congress. We just witnessed Dr. Meeks from Iowa, where they were going to administratively remove her, even though Iowa had certified her. She won by 6 votes. They rechecked and rechecked. She still won by 6 votes. And then she was seated by the Speaker. Okay? That wasn't the first time this has been attempted. Tip O'Neill actually did it in his tenure as Speaker. So the fact that they actually went back this and got ready to file gives impetus to another claim. So because the Constitution is silent in regards to the President, he is still an elected federal official. Therefore, you could extrapolate that it is the same guys here. Now, that would be a case that would have to go to the Supreme Court, and they would have to hear it. But I will tell you, this is kind of interesting on the court system. Who knew that when Donald Trump was elected, there were 9 openings on the 9th Circuit? Anybody in the audience know that? I did. So, if I was Mitch McConnell, and I was strategically understanding what was coming about, the 9th Circuit was going to be my holdup. Why wouldn't I have gone to Donald Trump and said, I need your 9 conservative judges, and we're going to ram it through just like Harry Reid. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the onus on the 9th Circuit. That's what I was telling you about in regards to understanding your rights as a state and sovereign. Go in and say, we're going to break you up, 9th Circuit, because you've got 3 times the backlog of any other circuit court that has actually been broken up. And start breaking them up. If I'm in the 12th district, the new 12th district, I'd happily take 4 liberal judges. And that number's poignant, because that gives me 4 more on the 9th Circuit that are conservative. I then make both circuits conservative. Now think through the circuit. Immigration, endangered species, public lands. 9th Circuit was our problem. So now if you get a rogue judge going against you, you appeal it to the 3-judge panel, which is going to be conservative. You have better chances of winning it then. Why not play differently instead of playing stupid? The other thing I will tell you is they are very keen about intimidating the Supreme Court. Senator Leahy, Senator Whitehouse, Chuck Schumer, all threatened the Supreme Court. There should have been charges brought against all 3 of them for those incidents. We now know that Judge Roberts is very easily swayed. And it's not just Obamacare. He's really good at changing the mind. He likes to legislate. That's why when he did the last one he just did, we put a letter to him. You want to run for Congress? Come out to Arizona, run against him. That way you can actually do policy. But when you're in a black robe, you're not here to do policy. You're here to issue a referee, is it right or is it wrong? That's it. So we not just need reforms at the state level, we need reforms at that level as well. Anything else? Inquiring minds want to know. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So if Biden is removed from office eventually due to health reasons, Kamala is then president,
Yep.
and then Pelosi, I understand, is next in line. Is that correct?
She technically would be, but my understanding is that she would have the ability to pick.
Do you know if they have any thoughts on that right now?
I don't. I can tell you that Kamala, the vice president, is actually doing a lot of the foreign affairs one-on-ones. From what we've heard, it's very kind of one-on-one with the president is very scripted. They're watching. I mean, if you watch his teleconference, it's a piece of work. He's out there, and it's not. Everybody notices this. So I don't want to wish anybody harm. You know, I think when somebody is fighting dementia, I think that is family abuse. That's me. I hope it's worth that in the end. I can't foresee the future, but I can definitely see as a healthcare provider his degradation, even in the last 3 months. So, I don't know. Yes?
So as we see population shifts in big states like New York and California, at what point will we have more representation? I don't know how that process works, but Arizona will be allowed to have more representation?
Yes, they do. But we have a census every 10 years. And that census looks at the patterns and where the population was at. There's still a fixed amount. There's 435 members of Congress. So they have to be apportioned where to match the population. So if we gain one, somebody's got to lose one. Okay, so California's probably going to lose 2, maybe 3. New York's going to probably lose 2. You're going to see Illinois lose 1. Rhode Island's going to lose 1. Michigan's going to lose 1. Texas is going to gain as many as 4. Florida will gain as many as 3. So that's the shift in the population. So they'll have to divide that representation up in the state. So that we each, let's say our population is 10,000 people, or 10 million people. 10 districts, we have to represent basically 1 million people each. So how do you put that together, looking at the oversight of communities of interest, geographic intent, no gerrymandering. You know, you look at our district, they went into little outcroppings in South Sedona, Western Camp Verde, just to get pockets of Republicans so they didn't have to put them in another district. They packed us. Does that help you understand? Yeah. And in this state, it's an independent redistricting commission that was set up by the people through initiative. So there's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then those 4 are picked from a pool of 5 independents who will be the chairman. And the first Republican that was picked was from Tucson. I can tell you he has been out of shape by what happened last time around. He's been very vocal about it. Communities of interest were ignored. Completely ignored. The committee, the chairwoman went to Coconino County 3 times. The population base of Santan Valley and Coconino County are exactly the same. And they refused. They refused 3 times. And the reason being is our district will be still very Republican. Probably Republicans over independents by 16 points. Democrats further back. So their liberal viewpoints are kind of lost. And they didn't want to do that. Just an FYI. But we do that every 10 years. That's why what's problematic is this 51st state of DC. They're hell-bent in changing that dynamics to have 2 more liberal senators. They don't care about the House member. It's those 2 senators that makes the difference for them. But if you go back to our Constitution, that district was never to be implied to leverage government on their behalf. DC was broken from Virginia, that was rescinded back. But Maryland still has the biggest piece. When they put the fence out around the Capitol, this 12-foot fence with barbed wire, they actually did us a favor. They showed us the federal outcomes. Why not put those under the jurisdiction of the House? And everything else goes back to Maryland. Then you've got taxation with representation. Don't have a city council, it's just federal buildings. And that's what the intent was. And if that's not palatable to you, and you still want to have the center of the government being on leveraging of the federal doctrine, then let's open it up. Maybe Omaha, Kansas City wants to petition for that place. I think they would. So from that standpoint, that's why they want to shift this 51st state of DC. It never was intended. Go back to the Constitution. Over and over again, they didn't want any beholding of that area to the federal court. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
What's the status on DC becoming a state?
Well, they get jammed through the House. So once again now, the Democrats think they have a way of doing it through the legislature. That's not the case. According to constitutional scholars, it would take an act with the rest of the states to admit them. So once again, we may be dependent upon the courts, and that's anybody's thought process. I serve on the council, the Committee on Government Oversight. We were given direct oversight of that, of the DC property. I can tell you that it's been plagued with errors, embezzlements, you name it. And we've tried to give them some autonomy, but they abuse it over and over and over again. And so I'll give you an example. So in the run-up to the January 6th, you'd expect, and they knew because of all the hotel rooms were sold out. In fact, most of the DC hotels were told not to give them to individuals that were conservative or had leanings. That's where they're coming from. But they knew that hundreds of thousands were coming. And then you had, in the preceding weeks, you had a bunch more people. So there was the day before, there was an alert from the Norfolk, Virginia FBI. Basically stated they got wind of something. That went out by 3 different communication types. Phone, email, text. Everybody got it and certified that they got it. They were then asked, do you want more police enforcement? Do you want National Guard? The speaker, that was me in charge, and the Capitol Police Sergeant said no. What happens when you have a small amount of people trying to keep orderly conduct, and you got millions of people, or close to a million, and then you get some people that cause the problem? Don't need to look at it. Just go back and look at it. There's some certain people that start the act. They're all organized. They go up to the ramp and tours people to follow. So this is something we can't feign. We have to address. Raul Grijalva tried to file an ethics complaint against me. Guess what he did in 2001, 2005, and 2017? He did the same thing I did. He tried not to seek the electors from Arizona when George Bush won first, second term, and Donald Trump. He just wasn't good enough then. We actually got a senator to pass. And it was critical. There was over 120 House members who were part of the process. There were some 30 senators backing the process. So when I was speaking, That's when this all started happening. Somebody comes up the upper gallery, starts raising a commotion. They interrupted me, so the speaker at the time held up and said, "This is allowed order. Get the gentleman out of the gallery." And he's yelling at what I think is Stimmy Hoyer. He's not looking at me, he's looking at Stimmy Hoyer. And then I'm not allowed to go with my comments. Just before I get to the very end, it degrades all the way down. So they're like, "Hey, we gotta clear the chamber." Da, 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 da. So if anything, that caused more of a handicap to us because after that, there were only 3 senators willing to stand up. And there was only 20 members of Congress. For Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Georgia. That really takes its toll. I'll end with this. When there's most chaos, is a golden opportunity for change. One of the best. You have to have strategy. You have to know where you're going. You have to implement it, and you have to have people that are hard-nosed and ready to dig in, dig us out. I really see that they've overplayed their hand. Now we got to do like what Sanford got me to talk about, was have a strategy from the states, from the legislatures, from the attorney generals, from the Republican members of Congress, in the House and Senate. What are you doing to stop this degradation of our republic? This is not a one-person rule, but it sure looks like it. And I wouldn't want to be a Democrat being labeled as one party. That doesn't go over well. The polling is across the country, no one likes that. It's like 70-some% of the population does not want that in the way it's going. So this is our time to speak. Your businesses, so you're the purring aspect of this country. And being small businesses, you do 90% of the business in the United States. The big companies put a moratorium on giving money to members of Congress from the Republican side. UPS, the big chamber, U.S. chamber, platforms. Now you see why, coming back to those platforms, they occupy the center stage, the public square of debate. Kind of an interesting time to be alive. But I hope that you'll look at it as, what did you do when you tell your grandkids, when you were there on that fateful term of 2018 to 2020? Or 2022? What did you do? And how did you reclaim the Republic? I think I know where most of you would be, but it's up to you. We need to teach people. We need to spend time with people. We don't have a lot of young people. The young man right back here, I got a chance to meet. I spoke to their group, America First PAC. They were called white supremacists. Their head is a Hispanic gentleman. When I spoke, he spoke, there was an African American, a Filipino American, a Jewish American, and I was the only white guy. These are young people that paid their own way to Miami, Florida, to be part of a movement about making America first. This is bigger than Donald Trump, folks. The Biden administration is trying to make America last. It's a clear dichotomy of decisions. What do you see? What are you willing to do? Because it's coming down to this. Once you go to that one party, 51st state comes D.C., we're not getting it back. No way, no how. There's reasons they're methodically going after the First Amendment and the Second Amendment at the same time. If you don't have a Second Amendment, you don't have a First. History has taught us very well. So, we just got to get everybody back to work. We got to get our kids to school across the board, and we got to be afraid of the coronavirus. We've got to move forward. And I think this community and our district has done very, very well. But make sure you spend some time complimenting Ms. Cinema and have her hold the filibuster. We need that, desperately. And let's go about our business about how do we elect people that are stand up for our sovereignty of Arizona, sovereignty of Lake Havasu City, Kingman, Bullhead, Chloride, you name it. Because the last time I looked, the federal government was only given a few charges. The rest went back to the states and to the people. It's time to reclaim those. And that's how we'll get back to being a republic. Folks, thanks for giving me the time. So in last year, in the waning moments, actually this year, the waning moments of the previous Congress, remember I kept telling you about this bill that I had about taking away the Sherman and Clayton antitrust exemptions from the medical insurance industry? Got it. Had to talk 8 senators off the roof, but now you're starting to see it play out. They're going to give you more choice. They got to come to you as the patient, the client, for what you want. They're going to start holding opportunities for hospitals to have more insurance coverage. They're also going to be able to start taking on the pharmaceuticals for better pricing. It's going to empower doctors to get back in the business of treating patients. So it's a fun time. It's a scary time because it can go the other way as well. They get forced the whole process of Medicare for all. Here's our opportunity. This is a great exchange of how do you build a marketplace that's answerable to the people, for the people, and by the people. So I wanted just to comment on that. I made a promise, and I got it done.